The garage door creaked open to reveal my mother hunched over cardboard boxes, her hands trembling as she wrapped Grandma Rose's antique crystal vase in yesterday's newspaper. 3 more boxes sat sealed beside her, each labeled for sale in her rushed handwriting. I'm Harper, and this was the moment I realized my mother had finally lost her mind. What are you doing? My voice came out sharper than intended, echoing against the concrete walls. She didn't even look up. These are just taking up space, honey. Derek says we need to liquidate our non-essential assets. Derek. That name again. Always Derek. Non-essential assets? I stepped closer, catching glimpses of other family treasures through gaps in the newspaper. That vase is the only thing we have left from Grandma. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for greater opportunities. She kept rapping, her movements mechanical. Derek showed me the projections. This investment could change everything for us. The familiar rage bubbled up inside me. 3 months ago, my mother had been a normal high school English teacher. Now she spoke in buzzwords and financial jargon, parroting whatever garbage Derek fed her at those self-help seminars. "Where's Dad?" I asked, though I already knew. He'd been spending more time at the garage lately, picking up extra shifts to cover the holes in our bank account. "Working late again," she sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "He doesn't understand vision, Harper. He's too limited in his thinking." I grabbed the vase from her hands. "And you're too unlimited in your spending. How much have you given Derek already?" "Invested," she corrected, reaching for the vase. "We've invested in our future, and it's none of your business." It became my business when Sophie started having panic attacks about money. I clutched the vase tighter. "She overheard you and Dad fighting last night." Something flickered across my mother's face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But it vanished quickly, replaced by that distant, zealous look I'd grown to hate. Sophie needs to understand that sometimes things get worse before they get better. She stood, brushing dust from her knees. "Derek says—" "Stop. Just stop." I backed away, still holding the vase. "Derek says, Derek shows, Derek thinks. When did you stop thinking for yourself?" The garage door opened again and Sophie slipped in, her eyes darting between us. At 14, my sister had always been sensitive to tension, and lately she'd developed an uncanny ability to appear whenever things escalated. "Mom?" Sophie's voice was small. "Mrs. Martinez next door asked if you're having a garage sale. She saw your Facebook post about the antiques." Mother brightened. "Yes, tell her to come over. Derek says we should start with our immediate network." "No," I cut her off. "These aren't going anywhere. Dad needs to know about this." She lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my arm. "Your father doesn't need to know anything. This is my decision." "Let go." The words came out in a hiss. Sophie made a small, distressed sound, and Mother released me immediately. We all stood frozen, the weight of what had just happened settling over us like dust. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Coming home early? Everything okay?" I looked at my mother. Really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands, the desperate gleam in her expression. Something was very wrong here, beyond the obvious financial strain. Derek hadn't just gotten into her head. He'd hollowed her out. "I'm taking these boxes inside," I said quietly. "And then we're going to wait for Dad. All of us." "Harper, please." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand what's at stake." "No, Mom." I gathered the unsealed box in my arms, careful with Grandma's vase. "I think I'm starting to understand exactly what's at stake. And I'm not letting you destroy our family for whatever scheme Derek's selling." Sophie helped me with the other boxes while our mother watched, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. As we carried our family's history back into the house, I made a promise to myself. I would find out what Derek had done to my mother, and I would make him pay for it. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. But standing in our garage that day, watching my mother crumble under the weight of whatever web Derek had spun around her, I felt nothing but fire. The fluorescent lights of Pete's auto shop buzzed overhead as I watched my father wipe grease from his hands. His shoulders were tight, his movements mechanical. Telltale signs that something was eating at him. "Your mother emptied the savings account." He didn't look at me as he spoke, focusing instead on arranging his tools with precise, controlled movements. Every penny we had set aside for your college fund. Gone. The wrench in my gut twisted harder. When? Yesterday. He finally turned, and the defeat in his eyes made my chest ache. She said it was a temporary transfer, something about securing positions in Derek's new venture before they filled up. Tina appeared in the doorway of the office, her expression grim. Michael, that investor meeting you asked me to look into? I found something. Dad nodded for her to continue, but she hesitated, glancing at me. It's okay, he said. Harper needs to hear this. Tina pulled out her phone. Derek's last 3 companies went bankrupt within 18 months of launching. Each time, the initial investors lost everything. She paused, scrolling. And get this. He was investigated for fraud in 2019, but the charges were dropped when the key witness suddenly refused to testify. The pieces clicked together in my head. That's why he targets people through those self-help retreats. He's building trust before he asks for money. Your mother won't believe any of this, Dad said, slumping against his workbench. She's convinced he's some kind of financial genius who's been unfairly maligned by small-minded people. The bitterness in his voice was raw. Then we show her proof. I pulled out my phone, but Tina shook her head. It's not that simple. People like Derek, they're master manipulators. They know exactly what to say to make their victims doubt everything except what they want them to believe. A customer's arrival interrupted us. Dad straightened, professional mask sliding into place, but Tina caught my arm as I turned to leave. Harper, be careful. Men like Derek? They notice when people start asking questions. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead, forming plans. At home, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Sophie sat at the kitchen table, pushing pasta around her plate while Mom talked rapidly into her phone. Yes, absolutely. No, I understand the urgency, Derek. I can meet you tonight to sign the paperwork. My fork clattered against my plate. Tonight? It's Sophie's art showcase at school. Mom covered the phone. I'll only be gone an hour. Sophie understands, don't you, sweetie? Sophie didn't look up, but I saw her shoulders curl inward, the same way they did whenever Mom chose Derek's urgent meetings over family commitments. Actually, I said, voice steady despite the rage building in my chest, I don't think she does understand. Neither do I. Harper, please. Mom's smile was strained. This is important. More important than your daughter's first gallery showing? The one she's been working toward all semester? Don't be dramatic. Derek says, Sophie suddenly shouted, making us both jump. I hate Derek. I hate what he's done to you. She shoved away from the table and ran upstairs, her door slamming moments later. Mom stared after her, phone forgotten in her hand. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of my old mother, the one who would have already been running up those stairs to comfort her daughter. But then Derek's tinny voice came through the phone and her eyes glazed over. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said into the receiver, gathering her keys. As she rushed past me, I grabbed her wrist. Mom, wait. Just look at what this is doing to us. She hesitated, and for one heartbeat, I thought I'd reached her. Then she pulled away. You'll understand someday, Harper, when you see the bigger picture. The door closed behind her, and I stood alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of what used to be our family dinner. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. How bad? I typed back. Worse. She's meeting Derek tonight. Sophie's devastated. His response came quickly. Stay with your sister. I'm calling Tina. Looking at the abandoned pasta, Sophie's muffled sobs from upstairs, and Mom's empty chair, I made a decision. Derek hadn't just stolen our money. He'd stolen our mother. And I was done watching it happen. Time to fight fire with fire. Mom's laptop screen glowed in the dark kitchen as I scrolled through her email. 3 a.m., and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from guilt, from rage. The encrypted messages between her and Derek laid bare a scheme far worse than I'd imagined. They weren't just planning another investment. They were targeting other families from Mom's school, using her reputation as a trusted teacher to rope them in. What are you doing? Sophie's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in her oversized art smock, paint still fresh on her fingers. You should be sleeping, I said, closing the laptop. So should you. She moved closer, glancing at the screen. Did you find something? Before I could answer, Dad's truck rumbled into the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home for hours. Sophie and I exchanged looks as voices carried through the walls. Dad's low and controlled. Mom's high and defensive. You confronted him? Mom's voice cracked. How dare you go behind my back? How dare I? Dad's laugh was hollow. Laura, he's taking everything we have, and now you're helping him target your own students' families? Sophie grabbed my arm. I hadn't realized I was moving toward the door until she stopped me. The front door slammed open. Derek's voice joined the chaos. Michael, you're making a serious mistake. My blood turned to ice. What was he doing at our house at this hour? The only mistake, Dad said, was not seeing you for what you are sooner. Get out of my house. Laura invited me. Derek's tone dripped with false concern. She called, very upset about your aggressive behavior at my office today. I edged toward the kitchen doorway, Sophie still clinging to my arm. Through the gap, I could see Derek, perfectly pressed suit, practiced smile, hand resting possessively on Mom's shoulder. Tell him, Laura, Derek urged. Tell him about the guaranteed returns. Show him the projections. The projections are fake, Dad spat. Just like your last 3 companies at sea. Just like every promise you've made. Michael, please. Mom stepped toward him. Derek showed me proof. The SEC investigation was a mistake. The investigation was buried, I said, stepping into view. Because your star witness disappeared, right, Derek? The room froze. Derek's smile flickered, then returned fuller, faker. Harper, shouldn't you be in bed? Shouldn't you be in jail? I pulled out my phone, displaying the articles I'd found. 3 bankruptcies, 200 families lost their savings, 1 witness who vanished right before testimony. Harper, enough! Mom moved between us and Derek. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Sophie's voice rang out, startling everyone. She thrust forward a sketch pad. Look what I drew in art therapy, Mom. Look what your choices are doing to us. The page showed our family, drawn in Sophie's talented hand. But we were fractured, pieces falling away, Derek's shadow looming over the broken pieces of Mom. Mom's hands trembled as she took the pad. Sophie, baby, Save it. Sophie's voice shook. I heard you on the phone yesterday. You're planning to remortgage the house. You're going to take everything, aren't you? Derek stepped forward, smooth as oil. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Laura. The children are clearly upset. The children, Dad cut in, are clearly smarter than we've been. He pulled out his phone. Tina sent me everything, Derek. Every scam, every victim. I'm meeting with the DA tomorrow. Derek's mask slipped. Just for a second, but I saw it. The flash of calculation, the predator beneath the smile. That would be unwise, he said softly. Laura's signature is on everything. Every transaction, every recruitment. How long do you think a teacher's career survives fraud charges? Mom made a small, broken sound. You son of a... Dad started forward, but Derek held up a hand. Just business, Michael. Nothing personal. He turned to Mom. Laura, we should go. Now. The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. Mom looked between Derek and us, her family, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I said quietly, if you leave with him now, you're choosing him over us. Forever. She took a step toward Derek. Sophie's sketchpad hit the floor. And I knew with crystalline clarity that revenge wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. Go ahead, Mom, I said, my voice arctic. But remember this moment. Because when everything falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to us. Derek led her out the door, but not before I caught his smirk. He thought he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. The manila envelope landed on Tina's desk with a soft thud. Inside were printouts of every conversation between Mom and her students' parents about Derek's investment opportunity. My hands hadn't stopped trembling since I'd found them. This is worse than we thought. Tina spread the papers across her desk. She's already collected deposits from 3 families. Dad leaned against the wall of the auto shop's office, eyes closed. How much? $50,000 each. I watched his jaw clench. And there are 7 more families lined up for next week. The phone on Tina's desk buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted. It's my contact at the SEC. Give me a minute. As she stepped out, Sophie's latest text flashed on my phone. Mom's packing boxes. Lots of them. We need to move faster, I said to Dad, before... The office door burst open. Derek stood there, immaculate in his charcoal suit, that practiced smile plastered across his face. Harper, Michael, how convenient to find you both here. Dad straightened, positioning himself between Derek and me. Get out. Now. Derek held up his hands. I'm here as a friend. To warn you. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward us. Your mother's signature. On everything. Transfer authorizations, investment contracts, recruitment agreements. If you pursue this, vendetta, she'll face federal charges. My throat went dry. You're bluffing. Am I? He scrolled through more documents. The DA might be interested in how she used her position as a teacher to solicit investments. The school board certainly would be. You manipulated her, Dad growled. I gave her opportunities. She chose to take them. Derek's smile turned predatory. Just like she chose to leave with me last night. Face it, Michael. She's not the victim here. She's my partner. The word partner hit like a physical blow. Dad must have felt it too. His hands curled into fist. What do you want? I asked, hating how my voice shook. Drop it. All of it. The DA, the SEC investigation, everything. He straightened his tie. In return, I'll ensure Laura's name stays clean when this all plays out. When what plays out? His smile widened. Let's just say certain investments are about to mature. The pieces clicked together. You're planning to disappear. With everything. Smart girl. He checked his watch. You have until tomorrow to decide. After that, well, I'd hate to see Laura's career end in handcuffs. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Harper? That encryption on Laura's laptop? Amateur work. Next time you go snooping, try harder. The door closed behind him just as Tina returned. She took one look at our faces and said, What happened? Before we could answer, my phone buzzed again. Sophie. Mom's gone. All her clothes, too. There's a note. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Dad caught my arm as I swayed. He knew, I whispered. He knew we were gathering evidence. This whole time he was 10 steps ahead. Not quite. Tina's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. She held up her phone. My SEC contact? She found the witness from Derek's last case. The one who disappeared? She paused, letting it sink in. It was Laura. She was the witness. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Mom knew? She knew what he was, and still... There's more, Tina continued. The witness didn't just disappear, she was bought off, with a promise of partnership in Derek's next venture. Dad's grip on my arm tightened. She's not just his victim. She's been working with him from the start. The truth settled over us like ash. Mom wasn't being manipulated. She was a willing participant. Every tear, every plea for understanding, every promise that she was doing this for our future, all lies. My phone buzzed one final time. Sophie again. The note says she's sorry, that she'll make it up to us when she's rich, that she loves us. I deleted the message without responding. The time for family loyalty was over. Mom had made her choice. Now I would make mine. Tina, I said, my voice steady for the first time all day. Call your SEC contact back. I know how we can trap them both. The burner phone buzzed in my pocket, our agreed signal. Across the crowded coffee shop, Tina nodded almost imperceptibly. Derek had taken the bait. Your mother's hosting an investment seminar next week, she murmured as she passed my table, pretending to bust dishes. At the Riverside Hotel. They're expecting at least 30 potential investors. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. 30 more families they could destroy. The bell above the door chimed. Mom walked in, designer handbag swinging from her arm. New money already being spent. She didn't notice me in the corner, too focused on her phone as she ordered her complicated drink. The usual, Laura? The barista smiled. Haven't seen you teaching lately. I found a more lucrative calling. Mom's laugh sounded foreign, practiced. Actually, I'm hosting a financial seminar next week. You should come. My fingers clenched around the cup. 3 tables away, Tina paused in her pretend cleaning. Really? The barista perked up. I've been trying to save for college. Perfect. Mom reached into her bag. Let me give you a brochure. Derek's system is revolutionary. Mom. She froze at my voice, turning slowly. Harper? What are you? Recruiting the morning shift now? I stood, forcing steadiness into my legs. Guess teachers and parents weren't enough? The barista glanced between us, confused. Mom's smile tightened. Sweetie, you don't understand the opportunity. Save it. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. Remember Mrs. Rodriguez, Sophie's art teacher? The single mom you convinced to invest her dead husband's life insurance? Color drained from her face. She's being evicted next week, I continued. Her daughter's dropping out of college to work full-time. Still feel revolutionary? That's temporary, Mom's voice wavered. Once the returns come in, there are no returns. The words exploded out of me, making nearby customers jump. It's all fake. You're destroying people's lives, and for what? So you can carry designer bags and play business mogul with Derek? You don't know anything about business. Her tone turned cold, dismissive, Derek's influence showing through. If people make poor financial choices... Poor choices? I laughed, harsh and hollow. Like being the star witness in Derek's fraud case? Like taking his hush money to switch sides? The coffee cup slipped from her hands, splattering across the floor. Tina stopped pretending to clean, watching intently. How did you... Mom's whisper trailed off. Does Derek know? I pressed harder, feeling the trap closing. That you kept copies of everything from his last scam? That they're hidden in a safety deposit box under Grandma Rose's name? Her eyes widened. Confirmation enough. Harper. Her voice dropped, urgent now. You need to stop this. You don't know what Derek is capable of. No, Mom, you need to stop this. I stood straighter, channeling every ounce of strength I had left. Because if you go through with next week's seminar, if you take $1 more from innocent people, I'm sending everything to the FBI. Your choice. She stepped closer, desperation crackling off her like static. He'll hurt us, all of us. Please, just let me handle this. Like you handled Mrs. Rodriguez's life savings? Something ugly flashed across her face. I'm still your mother. No. The word came out soft. Final. My mother died the day she chose Derek over her family. I turned to leave, but her hand caught my arm. Wait. Everything okay here? Tina appeared beside us, her presence steady and sure. Mom's grip tightened. This is family business. Funny. I pulled free. That's exactly what Derek said about the fraud charges. The bell chimed again. Derek himself stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. Mom's face went ashen. Laura, he called, voice carrying across the shop. A word? She moved toward him like a puppet on strings, but not before whispering, Whatever you're planning, stop. Now, or I won't be able to protect you. I watched them leave, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tina touched my shoulder gently. You okay? I nodded, pulling out the burner phone. The recording was perfect, every word captured clearly. One more piece of evidence for the FBI. Did you see his face? I asked, when she mentioned the safety deposit box. He looked scared, Tina confirmed. For the first time ever. Good. He should be scared. Because Mom was right about one thing. She couldn't protect me anymore. But I could destroy them both. The Riverside Hotel's ballroom glittered with false promises. Prospective investors mingled, clutching champagne flutes and glossy brochures, while Derek worked the room like a shark sensing blood. Mom stood at his side, all perfect makeup and practiced smile, as if she hadn't destroyed our family just weeks ago. I adjusted the hidden microphone under my blazer. The FBI agent's words echoed in my head. Get them talking about the previous scam. That's all we need. Sophie appeared beside me, her artist's portfolio clutched to her chest like armor. They're watching us. She was right. Derek's security team, 3 men in ill-fitting suits, had been tracking our movements since we arrived. Dad and Tina were somewhere in the crowd, waiting for my signal. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek's voice boomed through the speakers. Welcome to the future of financial freedom. The crowd pressed forward eagerly. I caught Mrs. Rodriguez's eye across the room. She'd come despite everything, desperate to recover her losses. My stomach churned. My partner, Laura, will share her own journey to financial independence. Mom stepped up to the microphone, radiant in her designer dress. A month ago, I was just a teacher, living paycheck to paycheck. Now you're a fraud. The words left my mouth before I could stop them, loud enough to carry. The room went silent. Mom's smile froze. Harper! Derek's voice carried a warning. Security, please escort. No. I moved forward, pulling out my phone. Let's talk about your last investment scheme, the one where Mom was supposed to testify against you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Derek's security team started moving, but Dad stepped into their path. Or better yet, I continued, let's discuss the safety deposit box, the one with all the evidence Mom kept as insurance. Derek's composure cracked. Laura, handle this. Harper, please. Mom's voice shook. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. I played the coffee shop recording, her voice filling the ballroom. He'll hurt us. All of us. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Derek's face darkened. Everyone out, he commanded. The presentation is postponed. But nobody moved. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward. Is it true? Was this all a scam? Of course not, Mom insisted. But her voice wavered. Harper is just confused. Show them, Sophie suddenly called out, opening her portfolio. Show them what you made me keep secret. She pulled out sketches, dozens of them. Mom and Derek in intense discussions. Mom crying over bank statements. Derek's threatening posture as he loomed over our family dinner. My art teacher said to draw what scares me. Sophie's voice cracked. This is what scares me, Mom. The room erupted in chaos. Investors demanded answers. Derek's security team moved in. Dad and Tina tried to reach us through the crowd. Then Derek laughed. A cold, calculating sound that froze my blood. Impressive performance, he said, pulling out his phone. But since we're sharing evidence... He played a video. Me, breaking into his office last week, copying files. Breaking and entering, corporate espionage, serious charges for a minor. Mom went pale. You said you'd leave her out of this. Plans change. Derek nodded to his security team. Like that safety deposit box you thought I didn't know about. The one that's being emptied right now. The ground seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Our backup evidence gone. You see, Harper, Derek continued, your mother made a choice long ago. She chose survival, just like you'll choose to walk away now, unless you want to spend your college years in juvenile detention. Harper, run! Dad's voice cut through the chaos, but I couldn't move. Mom stood frozen between Derek and me, tears streaming down her face, destroying her perfect makeup. I'm sorry, she whispered. The security team closed in. Tina shouted something about the FBI, but it was too late. Derek had outplayed us again. Sophie grabbed my hand, her grip desperate. This isn't over. But it was. I'd tried to save everyone, and instead I'd lost everything. The evidence, our leverage, maybe even my freedom. Derek's smile widened as he dialed his phone. Yes, officer, I'd like to report a break-in. The last thing I saw before the security team reached us was Mom's face. Not triumphant, not angry, just broken. Like she was watching both her daughters drown and choosing to let us sink. Maybe that's what revenge does. Makes you sacrifice the very things you were trying to save. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Mom's face as she sat across from me. Her designer outfit wrinkled from hours in custody. Behind the two-way mirror, I knew Dad, Tina, and the FBI agents were watching. Sign the confession, I said, sliding the paper forward. It's over. She stared at her manicured hands. Derek has evidence against you. The break-in was authorized. I pulled out an FBI warrant. Everything I did was legal. Everything you did wasn't. Her eyes darted to the door like she still expected Derek to sweep in and save her. But he couldn't. He was in the next room, probably making his own deal. "You don't understand what it was like," she whispered, being the star witness, knowing he could destroy everything. "When he offered me a partnership instead, you chose money over morality." "I chose survival," the words exploded from her. "Do you know what happens to whistleblowers? They lose everything, their careers, their families, their futures." "Like Mrs. Rodriguez lost everything?" She flinched. That was different. She knew the risks. Did Sophie know the risks? I pulled out my sister's sketches. "When you made her keep your secrets? When she had panic attacks watching you destroy our family?" "I was protecting you." "By teaching her that loyalty means helping people commit crimes?" My voice cracked. "By showing her that money matters more than morality?" The door opened. An FBI agent entered with a tablet. "Mrs. Harrison, you should see this." The video played. Derek in the next room, throwing her under the bus. Laura orchestrated everything. The teacher angle was her idea. She knew exactly how to manipulate her colleagues' trust. Mom's face crumpled. "He promised." "He's a liar," I said softly. "Just like you became." She reached for the confession with trembling hands, then stopped. "What happens to Sophie?" "Dad has custody. She's safe." "And you?" "I'm testifying against both of you." Her pen hovered over the paper. "I never meant for any of this to happen. When Derek showed up at that self-help retreat talking about financial freedom, it felt like a way out. A chance to be more than just a teacher living paycheck to paycheck. You were more. You were our mother." The pen scratched across paper. In the silence that followed, I could hear muffled sobs from the next room, Derek's facade finally cracking. "Harper," Mom's voice was small. "That safety deposit box. How did you know?" I didn't. The truth slipped out. "But I knew you. The real you, the teacher who always made copies of important documents, who taught me to keep evidence of everything." She looked up sharply. "There was no box?" "There was, just not where Derek looked." I stood. "The FBI found it this morning, at Grandpa's old bank. Not Grandma's." A choked laugh escaped her. "You played us both." "I learned from the best." The words tasted bitter. "You taught me everything I needed to know about manipulation and betrayal." The FBI agent returned. "It's time." Mom stood, handcuffs jingling. "Will you visit?" "No." The answer came easily now. Some things can't be fixed with false promises anymore. As they let her out, she turned back one last time. "I do love you. Both of you. Even if I forgot how to show it." "I know." I gathered the confession. "That's what makes this unforgivable." Outside, Sophie waited with Dad and Tina. She rushed forward, wrapping her arms around me. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Through the window, I watched them load Mom and Derek into separate police cars. All those months of planning, of gathering evidence, of playing their own game against them, it hadn't brought the satisfaction I'd expected. "Yeah," I said, holding my sister tighter. "But not the way I thought it would." Dad's hand landed on my shoulder. "You did what you had to do, maybe." But as the police cars pulled away, I wondered if revenge ever really fixes anything, or if it just teaches us how to break things differently. Sophie pulled out her sketchbook, a new drawing. Our family, smaller now but unbroken, standing in the light while two shadows retreated in the distance. Sometimes the only way to save what matters is to let go of what's already lost. Grandma Rose's crystal vase caught the morning light, casting prisms across the kitchen table. I'd found it in a local pawn shop, 3 buses and 2 hours away from home. The owner remembered Mom, her desperation, her promises of future wealth. "You didn't have to buy it back." Sophie traced the vase's edges with her fingertips. "It's just a thing." "No." I watched the light dance. "It's a reminder." The newspaper on the table showed Derek's conviction, 15 years for fraud. Mom got 5, with a chance of early release. The article mentioned restitution payments to the victims, but some things couldn't be repaid. Dad entered, still in his work clothes, grease staining his hands. Mrs. Rodriguez called. The settlement money helped her daughter re-enroll in college. Good. The word felt hollow. Justice had been served, but the victory tasted different than I'd imagined. Sophie pulled out her sketchbook, the one she'd kept hidden during Mom's descent into madness. I need to show you something. The pages revealed a secret history. Mom crying in her car after those first meetings with Derek. Her hands shaking as she signed documents. The moment she realized she was trapped, depicted in harsh, desperate strokes. I drew these to understand, Sophie said quietly, but I think I was really drawing them for you. Why? Because you needed to see Mom as human, not just a villain or a victim. She turned another page, a sketch of me, features twisted with rage as I planned my revenge. Just like I needed to see you as my sister, not just an avenging angel. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Tina's car in the driveway. She'd been helping Dad navigate the legal aftermath, their relationship evolving into something neither of them had expected. Harper. Sophie grabbed my wrist. There's one more thing. She pulled out a letter, the prison address stark in the corner. Mom's handwriting. She writes every week, Sophie admitted. I've been keeping them for when you're ready. My hands trembled. Have you read them? Some. She's different now. Less desperate. More like before. Before doesn't matter, doesn't it? She pushed the stack toward me. You won because you understood her better than Derek did. Maybe it's time to understand why. The doorbell rang again. Dad answered, his low murmur mixing with Tina's voice. Life moving forward, changing shape. I picked up the letters, feeling their weight. Reading these won't fix anything. No. Sophie opened her sketchbook to a new page, blank, waiting. But maybe that's not the point anymore. See, she was right. Revenge had been about breaking things. Relationships, trust, the false reality Mom and Derek had built. But now, in the quiet aftermath, maybe understanding mattered more than victory. I tucked the letters into my jacket. Not today, but soon. The vase, Sophie said suddenly. Why did you really buy it back? Through the crystal, the morning light fractured into countless pieces, each one telling a different story, like Mom's letters, like Sophie's sketches, like the broken pieces of our family, catching light in unexpected ways. Because some things are worth saving, I said finally, even if they'll never be the same. Sophie nodded, picking up her pencil. On the blank page, she began to sketch. Not the past, not the pain, but something new. Our smaller family around the kitchen table, the vase between us, broken light making everything gleam. Dad and Tina's laughter drifted in from the living room. Outside, Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter drove past, heading to her first day back at college. And somewhere, in a cell, Mom might be writing another letter, trying to explain what the rest of us were still learning. That revenge might break the thing that hurts you, but understanding might help you build something new from the pieces. I opened the first letter, Sophie's pencil scratching quietly beside me, the vase casting its fractured light across us both. Not an ending, not really, just a different kind of beginning. One where justice and healing could exist in the same broken light.